picture it from the map. And then we are going to give you a slightly better view. And really where we are here is in this reserve here in Panna. And it's a very special place. But most people will know, and this is a sort of picture reserve, and we're going to be going on a game drive today with a great chum and friend of mine, and he's going to take us through this. So this is a very beautiful park called Panna Tiger Reserve, as I mentioned. But it's probably better known, and most people actually end up going to an area nearby, which is called Khajuraho. And Khajuraho is very famous as a sort of Hindu and Jain temples, originally from the 10th century. So they were magnificent temples that were built by the Chandela Empire, and they're most famous because they're full of sort of erotic art. And I really beg you not to try this at home, because it could be very dangerous. But this is the sort of stuff you have, the beautiful artworks, sort of Kama Sutra-esque across this area. But actually, I preferred, when I'm in Panna, to go to another area called the Ajigar Fort. And the Ajigar Fort is not far away from the entrance to the Tiger Reserve. I think about 40 minutes drive, and it's this amazing fort, which actually doesn't have any of the tourists. It actually was built before these temples high on a hilltop. Beautiful old fort that very few people go to, and it's really worth a visit. And is great fun to see. And this is the sort of things you have all to yourself. Huge tanks, amazingly built in those days. And also in that area, also some villages that are in the middle of Madhya Pradesh. So this is a lovely area in which not only to get the temples, but you can also ideally come and enjoy Panna Tiger Reserve and the wildlife that's within it, particularly the tigers that are now well known within it. So I'm now going to start. If you start introducing you to a long old chum of mine. We've traveled together. He's very well known in these parts in India, and he's called, we call him Vinny, but he's actually called Shamendra Sharma. So I think he's there with us already, but I'm going to give you a picture. It probably is a few years old, Vinny, but it's a lovely picture of you standing, I think, on the deck of your lodge, the Ken River Lodge, if I'm correct. You can hear me okay? So welcome. Thanks for joining me. And you're presently sitting not very far from where this picture was taken. I think in your home there on the banks of the Ken River, correct?
Right. This is in my property. I'm sitting in my deck in my house, and there's all forest all around me.
I'm just trying to see if I can hear any noises, any sort of various. Of course, it's dark with you now, isn't it?
Yes, it's dark now.
Yeah. How's the weather been? Is it the monsoon's coming? Of course.
The monsoon's coming slightly earlier this year. We've already had a couple of pre-monsoon showers, and I think in another 2-3 days it's going to set in here.
Okay, so we're quite lucky that you're actually outside still and not being sort of having to move inside. So lovely to have you with. Now we're going to have to picture slightly because in our various travels we've been through a number, and this is your sort of ancestral land, isn't it? To some extent, your father was very much well known in these parts. So give us a little bit of background to your history within the Panna area, if you don't mind, Vinny.
So I am my ancestral land and area is sandwiched between Panna and Bandhavgarh. And my grandfather, that was his reserve where all the tigers were there. So here I am in Panna, and which is the Panna National Park, which was earlier erstwhile Panna Maharaja's hunting reserve.
That's right. Yeah.
And this area where you're seeing the photograph is the corridor. The tigers went through Panna, through this corridor, and all the way till Bandhavgarh, and they're still doing that till this day.
Yeah, it's really critical that we try and keep these kind of corridors open. And if I'm correct, we were looking very much at this stage, and this must have been 7-8 years ago, to run some camping trips through here in order to get some communities, give them some benefit of a bit of funds to help look after this landscape. And I'm correct in that, am I?
No, so what I was trying actually was trying to build up this corridor through the tourism mode. Probably if the tourists came in, that would interest our government and the landscape and the people, and probably they would keep the corridor alive. So that was
Exactly.
the initial idea of it.
And has that been, is the corridor still there? It's still with us at the moment?
No, so the jungle is there. Luckily, our laws are such the forest land stays forest land,
Yeah.
though the land is degraded a little bit. But there's a gap on both sides. One side, there's a 16-kilometer gap of farmland, which needs to be taken care of. And on the other side, between this patch of jungle and Bandhugarh is about a 6-kilometer gap where a highway and a railway line runs through.
Yeah.
So that has to be taken care of. Rest, I think, more or less is all intact.
But it is amazing. The reality is tigers sort of seem to be able to move around in an extraordinary way, even through farmlands and over reservoirs and over roads and corridors. It doesn't seem to stop them going to try and find their own territory. So we're very happy about that. So good luck with that. And I'm just going to picture where probably you and I first met here in the Ken River treehouse. I think it's almost the bar there, isn't it, if I'm correct?
Right. Locally, it's popularly known as the treehouse, Ken River Lodge. Yeah, and that's exactly where we met.
Yeah. Many moons ago now. Probably
that's a long
15,
time now. That's a long time
ago.
Right.
And Vinny's been a huge supporter of Tough Tigers. In fact, he was a original sort of non-executive director, trustee for the India Tough India organization. So huge thanks and hats off to you, Vinny, for doing that, allowing us to get Tough Tigers up and running. And of course, we have over the years had lots to do with Panna. And in fact, we helped train a number of their wildlife guides over the years. So it's a very special place. It's one of my favorites. Now, what I'm going to try and do now is to put Vinny sitting next to me metaphorically, not on my bike. I don't know if do you like biking, Vinny? I can't remember if you do.
I love biking. I love biking.
And it's probably it's a lovely region to bike around, that neck of the woods. Not that you can bike in the reserve, but certainly around is a lovely place to bike around. And we're going to metaphorically get we're going to go on a game drive. Vinny's going to guide us through that, and I've got a few photographs. So stay with us as we go through Panna and give you some idea of this fabulous park. One of my real favorites. It's had its ups and downs, and we'll talk to as we go through these. So we open the gates here, Vinny, and we head off into the park now. So probably the first thing you'll see is alongside the Ken River, the famous Ken River. Tell us a little bit about what we see in that photograph, the background there.
So behind the Ken River are baradaris. Those are cenotaphs and recreation houses, and the hill behind is all fortified. That area falls in the Chhatarpur district, where about 95 square kilometers of the park is on the other side. And that entire hill is fortified, and it had two great warriors, Ala and Udal, which a lot of bards till this day sing their bravery. And when our Indian troops went to fight the World War I, the bards went along, and then they sang those Ala Udal to pep up and boost up the Indian army. So that's
lovely
history. That's where it comes from. That's where Ala Udal comes from.
And that's a kind of cenotaph equivalent of that building on the other side. It's actually just outside the park, but it's part of that whole fortification system.
So there are a lot of cenotaphs, and which are under there are some trees. They're also hidden below that.
Yeah,
a lot of them have tumbled down also, because this was way back in the 15th, 16th century.
Yeah, of course. And of course, that's the amazing thing about India when you journey through it. It's just the history and the culture and extraordinary histories, and it's kind of a lot of it is just overgrown and laid to waste. And of course, Khajuraho itself was buried under trees for centuries, for literally, I think, for 800 years. So they had to.
Right.
They're still finding new places, I think, in Khajuraho, if I'm correct. So let's carry on a little bit next to the river. And I know as you go along the river, one of the great sightings in Panna, we always talk about tiger reserves, and poor old leopards get left behind in this. But you see a lot of leopards, don't you, in Panna?
Yes, you get to see them. We have plenty of leopards all over the country, but one advantage in Panna is because of being of dry, deciduous landscape, the visibility in the summers gets slightly better. And at one time when the tigers had gone down, they were the dominant predators. So you saw the leopards actually behaving like tigers, walking along the road, walking in front of the tourist vehicles. So they gave you great sightings.
Yeah. No, and this is, I saw a couple of a couple of leopards when I was there, and it was a real gem because I haven't seen them, especially in the tigers, especially the ones that are very successful. They kind of prey on each other, the two cats, and so where one's dominant, the other fades away. And you're right, when the sort of extinction sort of happened in Panna, you suddenly had this sort of all the leopards came back and said, yeah, I'm gonna get hold of that region. Right. And now that's slowly diminishing, presuming the leopards are now more on the fringes, I guess.
No, the leopards are still doing very well. The leopards are still doing very, very well. They moved out into the other areas, while the tigers have, come back into the numbers.
No, well, I'm glad. That's great news. That's great news. And then, of course, you often have some wonderful, because the Ken River is such a rich river full of wildlife and fish. You get something like this. So tell us about this beautiful bird.
So we have these huge Arjun terminalia trees all along the river.
That's right.
Make great nesting sites for these grey-headed fishing eagles. And of course, the rivers supplies them with plenty of fish. So they're doing very well here in our park. And every year you have freshness.
Yeah, freshness. If I'm correct, you also have the fish owl, don't you, as well?
We have the brownfish owl. Yes, we have the brownfish owl living paddle. They're very, very close to each other, and they use the same habitat.
Yeah,
different time of the year, different time of the day, night and day.
Of course. Yeah, no, lovely to see. So early in the morning, you might see the brownfish owl in those Arjuna trees, as you rightly said. And then, of course, along the river banks, you'd spot good old muggers. And you and I were having a sort of laugh as to why the mugger crocodile is so less ferocious towards humans than the Nile crocodile that I'm so used to in my neck of the woods in Africa. So, and I don't know if you had the exact answer. I know Raghu didn't have the answers to why they're so much friendlier to humans than they are here. But there are lots of them on the Ken, aren't there?
So it's only in the Ken where I think probably they got habituated to being a little friendly towards human beings. But I feel that they've not been allowed to grow more than about 12 feet or so. The moment they size up and get into that nasty 14 feet, they can get dangerous. So you've got to be really careful. And plus, also the people of Panna have known to avoid all these dangerous animals. Yeah. So we've only had 2 incidences so far of small accidents.
No, it's true. It's amazing. Even though you see fishermen on the river and you see all that sort of happening, they have a very kind of long sort of history together and respect each other in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. Sadly, I think you can't quite see, but this is the sort of picture I'm putting in. We're in our Jeep and we're driving through. And the one thing I've always found about Panna is just how habituated the herbivores are. So you can get very close to the deer and the spotted deer. And here's a picture. I'm sorry you can't totally see. There's a couple of spotted deer right next to your vehicle. And that's
we can see the Sambas band. Yes. Yeah.
So you can get some brilliant photographs as you go around. And that was something that really stood out for me when I first went to Panna all those years ago. Even then, everything was incredible. It just didn't move. You could always drive up to it and it still wouldn't move. And certainly a lot of the big stuff. So then we drive up from the river and we get up into the plateau. So just describe a little bit the sort of geology of Panna, if you wouldn't mind.
So the whole of park is into 3 plateaus, 3 escarpments, and the tourism, we use the valley of the Ken, the first one. Then we climb up in the middle plateau where the tourism zone is. The rest of the areas are core where tourists aren't allowed. Yeah. And so this is the beginning of the winters from the north side.
I don't know how I got that picture then.
So it's
okay. Was that, did it used to be like? Because I mean, this was
Pardon?
probably a picture I took in 2010 or
No,
so.
no. This is very much in the tourism zone,
Oh, this one.
and
Okay.
yeah, this is the tourism zone. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I thought that was, I got that wrong. And of course, um, it is a picture here of some of the spotted deer up there on one of those plateaus. But sort of must be very, very green. So it's post monsoon, I guess. Parks just open picture.
Yeah. So
And huge herds.
so normally when the park and a little darker or the monsoon, the forest is all lush, different shades of green, but it changes quickly. November, December, it gets into shades of brown then slowly because it's a dry deciduous forest.
Yeah. No, well, that's absolutely how we go about it. It goes very quickly from that green, the very tall grasses that sort of shrink and decompose and get down to. This is a lovely waterfall, and you'd come on one of those places. You somehow come across this lovely gorge area with the water spilling over it. Remind me of the name of this place.
This is Dhundwa Seha. A Seha is a ravine in our local language, and Dhundwa is the spray which comes in. That's how it got its name.
Lovely, lovely. And of course, this would be what Octoberish time you'd see this.
October till about end of October, you can see something like that if the monsoons are late. Otherwise, you always, and slightly better than this, more quantum of water right from July, August, September. Then October starts thinning down a little bit.
Yeah, and of course, one of the sort of issues is that the park closes, doesn't it? So you can't go in for some of the. I always think it's a shame about India is actually
during the monsoon. Yes, so 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost an anathema to me because lots of other parts of the
we
world,
have a lot of these.
Sorry, Vinny. I was just saying a lot of the other parts of the world, you have a kind of green season and you have a dry season phase, and it doesn't stop the tourism being able to go in. You may do it in a different format in a different way. But, to me, India not having places you can go and see the monsoon when all the insects are out and all the invertebrates and all the different birds are multiplying and everyone's happy and fresh and renewed is such a shame to a great extent.
I agree with that. I agree. Most of the hotels are closed, and you're not permitted to go inside. But it's a lovely time. Madhya Pradesh, central India is a beautiful time during the monsoon.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a sort of wasted opportunity in some ways. But I know there's road issues and all that sort of stuff. But there are different ways you can show that in some other way. I'm certain of that. And so here's the same. But of course, the gorge, that same ravine, there it is in, what would you say, probably April or something. Looks totally different.
Yeah, that's April because there are a lot of droppings, and that's a very it's a great place for the vultures to breed.
The vultures, yeah. Which ones? The long
vultures, yes.
Yeah.
So we got about 8 varieties. 7 of them all land up here during the winters, except for the lammergeier, which is up in the mountains. We have 7 area. So and the longbill vultures, they're the ones which actually breed here in this gorge.
Okay. And tell me how are they doing? I mean, we had this desperate collapse. We lost 95, 99%. Some people say of the vulture population in India in the last 15 years. Are they recovering here in Panna? Because it's a really good place for them, isn't it?
I think the white-back vulture is having a tough time, but certain areas where there's less use of chemicals and there are backward areas where farming practices are still a little primitive, I think they're doing very well. They're coming back. They're reviving. But I don't think the white-back vulture is doing too well because that's the vulture which lived along with the population.
Yeah, and that was the one you saw was completely ubiquitous with every village, And,
yes.
And you see the tree in the middle of the village with lots of vultures, and then people, had immense respect for it because it used to get rid of all the carcasses and that sort of thing. And that's all gone now, and it was because of a particular chemical they discovered, dipropanic, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. They blame it on diclofenac, the chemical which probably all the cattle are given. And because of these gyps vultures, they go and eat the innards. They get affected, and then they just die.
Yeah, it's a really sad story, that one. And but I'm glad they found out what the problem was, and in fact they've banned the diclofenac, which is a kind of anti-inflammatory, which of course humans use as well. But I think people started using it for the cattle and stuff. So, okay, just a sort of one of my sort of slight annoyances always in some of these parks is they put up things like you can see here, this sort of structure, big sort of visitor structure. You can climb even further up, and it completely spoils a beautiful landscape. And I never understand why the forest department allows those kind of visitor structures happen. It's such a beautiful place. You can see so far, so you don't need yet another few feet with a bit of concrete to go there. So a slight bugbear. I hope you don't mind me mentioning that.
I totally agree with you. They're not very good at architecture. They're morons in some way. You know, they're not taught a good design, and
Yeah.
I think it just spoils the skyline.
Yeah, completely spoils the photograph, spoils the finance. So absolutely. So we just at some stage, and this is some 1990s. Now we're going back a little bit. We had this amazing surge in tiger numbers. There was a well-known researcher called Raghu Chandawat, was doing work in this area and was really putting Panna on the map. When did you start coming here? Because it was about that time, wasn't it? Really? 1990.
So I've been since '86 in Panna.
Oh,
Way beyond when the Tigers were not doing too well. And then there was a time after Raghu when he came in, and there were researchers when the Tigers really did well. And then we lost all our Tigers, unfortunately.
That's right. Yeah. So he was culling tigers. They were doing really well. He was following them. They were breeding like mad. And then a sort of massive collapse of them. And he was informing the authorities that the tigers are disappearing. I don't know what's happening. And the interesting thing is, just very shortly, we're going to be joined by potentially one of the ex-poachers. In fact, his father was a well-known poacher who was doing some of that. So stay with us as we continue our journey through this park. So here we are, and here's them actually collaring the tigers. And this is probably late 1990s in this area. So it was a time in which I first visited Panna and started to enjoy its riches. And I don't know if you can see, but there is a tiger just there on top of those plateaus, resting up. And of course, those ravines often were fantastic dens, weren't they, for a number of cats, leopards, hyenas, all those sort of things down there, as well as tigers. Vinny, let me just talk a little bit about now. Let's not worry about then, because that happened. They reintroduced tigers back into the landscape. And how's Panna doing now? Let's be tiger centric.
So with Panna, initially, I think when it started off, when it was made the national park and became a tiger reserve, Project Tiger, it's been a conservation success. But then midway through, I think 2002 and all, when things started going wrong, when people like Raghu, myself, and other people started pointing out that this was going wrong, they didn't agree. And unfortunately, we lost all our tigers. And then they, with a lot of pressure from all of us, they bought this program of rewilding the tigers at Panna. I would say the rewilding of tigers has been a great success, which taught conservation to the world. And we have 50 plus in this area now.
That's
in fact,
amazing.
far too much.
Yeah. Far too many.
They recovered very, very well. I think the whole landscape, all the people all around, people living around, agreed to have tigers. So the poaching came down to zero, and they got a lot of support from the local people from the district of Panna.
Yeah. So it's an amazing success story. So it went up and then went right crashing down, and then we're back again with reintroduction. And you said 50 in the entire Panna landscape. That's a considering I think how many did they reintroduce in the sort of?
I think the total number of tigers which came in was seven. At different stages. Initially, it was just 3.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, right. So the success is from the 2 females and 1 male. They've been the real ones which dominated the landscape so far.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge credit that they managed to do that in a massively successful sort of reintroduction program. Funny enough, it's hard to work because, of course, in other parts where they've tried to do that, it just hasn't worked at all. In Semipal and Arisha, it just didn't work at all. And it's probably because the communities had seen the benefits of it, of having tigers, had experienced that, but also they were used to working with big cats. As soon as you stop the population from having those or don't give them the economy surrounding it, it is a problem to reintroduce, I think. So here again on one of the plateaus, and this is in the tourism zone. I believe, isn't it still?
Yeah, this is all in the tourism zone. Yeah, this is. Yeah, you on top of the escarpment on top. That area is out of bounds.
Okay. And with these areas of sort of grasslands on top of the plateaus, would originally been the grazers and sort of you'd have had some villages, communities there, let's say?
So basically, initially, most of the Panna National Park was not agriculture area. There were cattle camps, and people came with their dry cattle to graze, and they just took back some clarified butter, and all the milking were closer to the villages. And it's later that some of the families started clearing up a little patch of land, and then they turned into villages. But they were just cattle camps, the whole area. They're all basically grasslands.
So it was just seasonal grazing, really, for most
really seasonal grazing.
Yes. And the wonderful thing about driving around is you suddenly look at what would appear to be a set of rocks, and you discover something amazing in there. Can we see something right there? Tell us about that lovely little creature, if you can see it.
So that's a painted sandgrouse.
Yeah.
I think I'm not.
Yeah, it is.
Painted sandgrouse.
It'd be very difficult to see.
Yeah, painted sandgrouse. Yeah.
And it's just one of my pictures.
So I got a small screen, so I'm not too good.
Because you show me around. This is a test. Yeah, painted sandgrass, lovely little. They completely. We were right next to it. Right, the car was right next to it. Totally still, as quiet as anything, and you wouldn't, unless you absolutely looking out for it. Very hard to spot. It's so camouflaged. Yeah. A real little gem in the grasses there. And then we have lovely nilgai. Lots of nilgai there.
Lots of nilgai. They're still there. There are quite a few of them.
Yeah. And of course, they're usually more sort of fringe bark animals and work in the fields and things. So good to have them in the middle there. Lots of langur that looking out. You can always get lovely photographs of langur with the sun behind them. So that's it. This one was, I think, the entire troop was actually looking at some there was some sort of leopard calls a little further away, and they don't like leopards, so they were all most intrigued. They weren't interested in me at all. They were only interested in what they could hear, the danger that was next to them. And of course, these lovely fellows. So your wild
dogs?
Yeah.
The dholes.
The dholes.
Yeah, the dholes.
Yeah.
Right.
And you see, you were saying you don't see them
so
very much.
They're the most. So, working for the last 35 years, I've noticed that they have a cycle of every 4th year they show up, do very well, and then they disappear. They have a huge range. Either they go off to those surrounding jungles, or there's some kind of a disease which comes in, distemper or a rabies or something, and they wipe the whole population off. But then every 4th year they show up on an average. And they're the most skillful animals in the Indian jungle, most skillful hunters in the Indian jungle.
Yeah. I love them. If I get a chance, wild dogs, and you can't tear me away from wild dogs and the dhole in India or in Africa, because he's the most exciting thing to watch, because he's always on the case. They're always nattering with each other. They're brilliant ambushes. The rest of the plateau around is always scared stiff of them, and so it's a really fascinating thing to be around as part of nature when they're around. Okay, now I'm going to, Vinny, thank you very much for showing us around Panna. Wonderful sort of game drive. And I'm now delighted be introducing probably one of your nemesis in the olden days, a man called Biren Padi. And the Padi community was a well-known hunting community originally, and Biren himself is a hunter, an ex-hunter, I should say. So welcome to it, and he's kindly being accompanied by Indraban. So Indraban and Biren, welcome to my Bike for Tiger Challenge. Great to have you with us. Namaste. Aap kaise hain? Good. Is your I think you need to have your voice on. Is their voice? They haven't got the audio. Can you switch your audio on? There we go.
Yeah. Are you here, sir? Namaste.
Yeah.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Namaste.
कैसे हैं?
No.
और बढ़िया है सर.
He's good. We are good.
Good to have you with us. So Biren is as I say, his hunting community. His father was a well-known hunter. He used to go out with his son. Did you enjoy going out into the wilds when you were a young man, Biren?
Yes, sir.
You might need that
Sorry?
translating a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy going into the wilds with your father when you were a young man?
आप आनंद लेते हो जंगल का?
जी सर.
Yes.
बहुत बढ़िया आनंद आता है सर.
Yeah. And the wonderful thing about Biren now is he's
अच्छा लगता है जंगल भी सर.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to give you a good picture. There he is, and a wonderful organization called the Last Wilderness Foundation has taken a number of these of community members, the Padi community, who historically have been very much left behind in terms of their economic status, and are now being taught to become wildlife guides and show their tremendous skills in the wilds to visitors going into Panna, and it's doing a real turnaround job for these communities. And Biren's one of their star guides now, and is wheeled out. And we're very delighted to have Vidyasi also with us, who heads up that organization. So very well done to you, Vidya, for doing what you've done over a number of years. And I know Indrabanji has also been very important in doing that.
Thank you.
Tell me, Biren, your life now, very different. Do you like taking visitors to your areas that you used to walk for, and indeed poaching, I presume?
Sorry, kindly repeat again, sir.
Life's very different now to what it was when you were a young man, showing people now your place.
आपको अभी कैसा लग रहा है? पहले की जिंदगी के सामने अभी आपकी जिंदगी कैसी लग रही है? गेस्टों को घुमाना अच्छा
अच्छी लग रही सर. बढ़िया अच्छी लग रही सर. बहुत बढ़िया.
So now he's telling very good now.
जी, very good.
Yeah.
बहुत बढ़िया लग रही है अभी तो.
So effectively, the communities had to hunt because they had no other options in terms of livelihoods. They were very skilled at it, and so they did it. And what Last Wilderness has done is allowed them to be brought back into the kind of community, become the sort of main benefactors from visitors who are coming in. Here's Biren showing people the natural world through his own eyes, through the eyes that he was taught by his father. And of course, that's an incredible skill that he has, walking in in what most people wouldn't dream of walking in now. He was perfectly comfortable. Often these guys would be out at night even. And so we're delighted to have that, and huge thanks to that work. So, and I had the joy of being with Biren and Indrabanji last October, and he took me to one of these gorges as the sun was setting. It's a very beautiful sort of picture, and he showed me his lovely landscape where he now lives very close to on the borders. And I'm going to ask him, because he showed me, and I even practiced a little bit myself. He showed me some of the instruments they use to the mimicry they also use in these wilds. So I'm going to let him give you a little flavor of the sort of mimicry that he was able to do and learnt as a man of the bush, man of the wild.
Yeah.
What would you like to start with? Maybe a spur fowl.
तो आप कौन सी मिमिक्री करना चाहोगे? आप कौन सी आवाज निकालना चाहोगे?
हम चाहेंगे सर आगे लेपर्ड फिर है तो
लेपर्ड
हाँ लेपर्ड
Okay.
और फिर
So you want to doing leopard call?
Leopard call. We're delighted by leopard call. So everyone listen out for the leopard call.
Still good.
Good. Acha.
यही से सर
It's an amazing call. You can hear the sort of guttural effect, and of course they use these very effectively in their trade. Of course. What else would you like to do?
So next call, sir.
Yeah, next call.
Yeah. So
yes sir
दूसरी आवाज कौन सी निकालना चाहोगे?
दूसरी हो गई फिर चिड़िया की पक्षी की
फ्रैंकलिन
थिकनी की निकाल देते हैं
थिकनी की निकाल
और
हाँ निकाल थिकनी दिस इज अ थिकनी कॉल
Thickney.
Bird.
Okay. Thickney.
Thickney.
Okay. Thickney the bird, the thickney. Big
Yeah,
long-legged
yeah.
wonderful creature
Yeah.
by this.
हाँ निकाल
I love that. It's so realistic. It's brilliant. Okay. So superb, superb. And I think we're going to have to keep you going a little bit. Give us another one. Maybe you used one which is whistle.
whistle वाला so this ये काय की whistle है?
ये ग्रे फ्रैंक कोलिंग की
हाँ
ग्रे फ्रैंक कोलिंग की सर
A grey
ये
Franklin.
बिसिल
Okay.
हाँ ग्रे फ्रैंक कोलिंग की सर
हाँ और ये आपने बनाई है
जी हमने बनाई है सर ये
और काय से बनाई है?
ये एक खेर वाली है सर खेर से
So this is made by Biren, used to call Franklin by the kher tree. This is
खेर
made by
और
kher,
एक तेंदु है
and this is tendu tree.
A tendu tree.
No?
Okay. It's from
Yeah.
the tendu tree itself.
Yeah. So बता कैसे? Done.
Yeah. Brilliant. Very good. बहुत अच्छा.
बहुत अच्छा है बहुत अच्छा कह रहे हैं
बहुत अच्छा. And you know, these are the skills that he would have learned to mimic in order to try and get his dinner in the evening and stuff like that. So real great skills. Vinny, have you never heard Biren do that before?
No, I haven't heard him ever.
Yeah.
It's very close.
And do you know many others who can are that good at mimicry? I mean, there are very few that can get that good at doing those kind of skills.
Yeah, there are a lot of people in this tribe who copy that to call the birds close to them.
Yeah.
That's where the skill lies.
Yeah. Of course, I get that totally. Yeah, nothing like good dinner call. Need some kana.
Right.
Good. Well, that's wonderful. And of course, you can thank you very much, Biren, for highlighting those wonderful calls. And I know he's got lots of other ones. I think he does sloth bear, and he does I think he does do you do bug as well? Do you do some bug calls at all?
Sorry?
Do you do any tiger calling at all?
टाइगर का
Yeah. Tiger call. कब करता है ये भी बता दो.
Okay.
ये सर एक सुबह की टाइम में फिर शाम की टाइम में.
So this call makes in morning
सुबह
as
के
well
टाइम.
evening also.
Okay. Territorial. And that's a kind of territorial sort of call, a kind of I'm here type thing. I'm here if I'm correct in terms of doing it. Is that am I correct in that, Vinny? In terms of
Normally when they get up from the siesta, when they're about to move, they just announce that they're now on the prowl.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a casual sort of a call when they go for their little walk.
I would have thought the langur monkeys would be right onto that one straight away and telling him beware.
Well, they all react. They all, when they hear that noise, the jungle does react.
The jungle doesn't need to tell the tigers on the move. They bloody know it well before the tiger gets up. That's just I am the king of the jungle. Now, you can go on the Last Wilderness Foundation's website, if I'm correct, can't you, Vidya, and purchase these wonderful little instruments where you can learn to do those things. There's some beadwork that these guys are up to. But I want to definitely thank you both very much for being with me on my bike for tigers on our game drive around Panna. It's been a huge joy. Very wonderful to have you there.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Dhanyavad.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And it's about time you all went and had a bit of kana, and I had a cup of tea because they're sort of slightly different things. So thank you both. Vinny, huge thanks for being with me on my game drive.
Thank you.
I'm just going to switch into last few things that I'm going to talk about. Please do realize when we go through these wonderful areas, Top Tigers is a sort of collective action campaign for sustainable tourism and for driving conservation-based tourism across India. We do an auditing function on lots of the different lodges. There's some amazing lodges. Vinny's obviously got one, but we've also got Pashangar Taj Safari's got a lovely lodge in Panna you can enjoy. There's also the Tendu Leaf here as well, which is on the banks of the Kanna, which is also a relatively newcomer to Panna. Go and enjoy these are wonderful places to stay and enjoy the park from there. So do look for those. Look for the pug certification as part of the pug markers you will see on that photograph there. And what we'll do now is, Vinny, we'll actually end up going and having a beer on the side of the Ken River, just right next to your treehouse lodge, because it's the most beautiful place to watch the dusk go down. I know it's already done, but that's where I'm going to have a beer. So thank you everyone for joining me. Oops, now we've got one or two comments coming in, I think.
Yeah. We've had a bit of a debate going on online.
Okay.
Started by Imataz Khan, and he asks, what are your views about the Ken Betwa project and how much would it affect the Panna National Park?
Right, Vinny, that's absolutely one for you, my friend. From Imtiaz Khan, who's I think I know him well.
So what I think is that's going to be a total disaster. Just because the thought of the government, Indian government, about the water was great. But the way where they went around spoiling landscapes for building large dams, where these large dams are no all over the place now, all over the world, they could have thought of some other program. And here, Panna National Park, which is the only dry deciduous healthy park which is connected to the wet deciduous where the tigers can survive, and you are spoiling it. The worst is that you are taking about 100 square kilometers of the jungle to make this dam, and you're not even justifying the use of the water. The water is being sent down to Uttar Pradesh, which has already got the Indo-Gangetic floodplains, which have for centuries been using the water. The Betwa is a larger river than the Ken. the Kane River is underutilized. The whole of Panna district has only got about 7 to 11% of irrigation. Instead of giving the water of the Kane and the tributaries to Panna district, they are robbing our water and taking it away and supplying it to Betwa, because there are 3 big towns, big politicians upstream on the Betwa, the Bhopal, our capital is there. They have overutilized the water, and now they are robbing away the people's water from Panna, and they are destroying our habitat and the tigers. Sad story. They could have chosen some other project. It's a bad project according to me.
Thanks,
And I
Vinny,
think
for that.
Sandeep Pandey would agree with you, because he says he doesn't think it's a good project for the nature and the tiger reserve. So he's totally in agreement with you. And then I've got Philippa Kay. She's asking if anyone is doing any official research on the Dole.
Yeah.
Official research.
On the wild dogs, the Dole.
Wild dogs, the Dole itself. I don't know of any myself. I guess there probably is, but it's a. Do you know anyone doing any research on the Dole, Vinny?
No, actually, the dholes are widely spread throughout the country. So I don't know in which pocket anyone has done, but no one has so far come to study the dholes in between Panna and this landscape area. So no one's actually ever asked me a personal question. What I said about the dholes is just my personal recording, because I keep traveling and I keep seeing them in the corridor, which I spoke about, and then they go missing. So I always use these jungle roads. So that's all is my personal knowledge. Elsewhere, how they use the landscape is you need a researcher to get scientific knowledge.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, we've had massive appreciation for Biren. Massive round of applause from everybody that's watching. Well done.
Great stuff, and lovely to have you on the other side of the fence with us, saving nature now. So that's brilliant. So big thanks to everybody, and we're going to finish with that. Debs, thanks again. Vinny, all the best.
Thank you. Okay.
Hit the button. I hit the button.
Bye.
Bye, Biren.
Cheers, Biren. Thanks, Indraban.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thank you.
Thanks for a lovely show. Debs, just hit the live button if you don't mind, because last time we carried on our conversation well after that. So we've stopped.
Yeah.
Good.